This ordinary boy who gets into an accident suddenly wakes up in another world, and there he becomes a poor homeless who is tortured badly by guards every single day. In the beginning, we see our MC Rio, who was just a normal high school student sitting on a bus, lost in memories of his childhood, remembering how he used to hold hands with his childhood friend, promising to be together forever. Suddenly, the bus went out of control and bam, a train smashed into it, and Rio was sent to another world. But even after arriving, things didn't get any better. The moment he landed in this new world, he got caught by a bunch of people, strung up and beaten badly. His face turned black and blue, looking completely pitiful. Honestly, even the guy from next door didn't have it this bad. Now, while others eat big meals with meat, he can only survive on wild berries. Then his head starts hurting from all the new memories flooding in. He remembers he used to have a mom, but for some unknown reason she was killed, leaving him as an orphan in the slums. All his life since then has just been clinging to survival, hoping for a chance to avenge his mother. Suddenly, a group of noble young ladies appears, asking if Rio has seen a girl with purple hair. Seeing how they speak, he says he hasn't. Luckily, there's a white-haired girl among them who seems kinder, and after some talking, Rio tells them everything he knows and even warns them that it's dangerous to enter the slums dressed like that. They decide to change clothes before coming back, and the eldest among them, just to be safe, asks the white-haired girl to cast a wide area detection spell. Nothing turns up, but surprisingly, the spell reveals that Rio himself has a huge amount of magic power. The girls are shocked. No one expected this dirty kid to actually beat some kind of magic prodigy. The white-haired girl says he's got real talent and could become a serious threat someday, but since their magic search still can't find the purple-haired girl, the ladies decide to go change and come back for another look. Before leaving, the white-haired girl gives Rio a bag of money as a thank you for sharing information. He has never seen so much money before. He quickly hides the bag in his shirt and runs back to his shack. But as soon as he opens the door, a stranger tries to stab him, only for the knife to be blocked by the money pouch. Still, all his former roommates have already been killed. Just as the killer is about to strike again, time suddenly freezes and a pink-haired older girl appears, telling Rio how to use magic. He just needs to imagine it to make his body stronger. The assassin, realizing he's outmatched, tries to use magic himself, but it's no use. Rio is stronger. Soon, he snaps the killer's arm and throws him over his shoulder, knocking him out cold. Once the danger is over, Rio hears a noise coming from a bag in the corner, and when he opens it, he's shocked to find the very purple-haired girl everyone's been looking for. She asks him to take her back to the castle, but before she can finish, she faints on the spot. Out of kindness, Rio carries her to look for her friends, but the moment he meets them, he's slapped, and one of the girls accuses him of kidnapping. No matter how he tries to explain, they refuse to listen, insisting on dragging him to the castle for questioning. Meanwhile, soldiers are arresting the assassin back at the shack, but another hidden accomplice smashes a red crystal, causing chaos, and the captured killer dies right there. Rio's luck just keeps getting worse. Even after rescuing the princess, he gets slapped and dragged away. He thought it would just be a simple questioning, but instead he's thrown straight into a brutal interrogation by a tough blonde knight who tries to torture a confession out of him. Rio insists he didn't do anything wrong, but the blonde knight wants him to take the blame for the princess's kidnapping, since their own knights failed to save her. If Rio confesses, the knight gets to play hero. Meanwhile, the second princess wakes up, confused and not sure what's going on. After learning the whole story from the older sister, she urgently demands they bring her rescuer to her, insisting he's her savior. The big sister and the white-haired girl realize their mistake and rush to the interrogation room, arriving just in time to see Rio in terrible shape. If they had come a minute later, it might have been too late. The blonde knight stubbornly refuses to let him go, but once the princess herself says he saved her, he reluctantly orders his men to untie Rio. The moment he's freed, Rio faints again. When he wakes up, he finds himself in a clean bed, being cared for by the white-haired girl, who has also healed his wounds. She apologizes for how reckless they'd been, and says the king wants to thank him in person. Rio worries about meeting the king with no manners, so the white-haired girl teaches him some etiquette. The next day, the king calls him to the palace. He dresses up as best as he can, looking like a totally different person, and when he stands before the king and queen, he's calm and impressive, showing incredible poise and future promise. This really is the most put-upon protagonist I've ever seen. He saves the princess, gets framed as a villain, and even endures brutal torture, all while still managing to impress everyone. But after only a few years, he transforms completely. Now, he's nothing like his past self. Even the tough blonde knight who once tortured him is just a washed-up guy with no sword skills left. You'd expect Rio to hold a grudge, but instead, the king thanks him sincerely and even lets him enroll in the royal academy. When the white-haired girl hears Rio can't read or write, she promises to tutor him after school, but also warns him that the school is full of nobles who might pick on him. Sure enough, when he introduces himself, he stands out. The white-haired girl quickly finds him a seat and begins teaching. Since she promised extra lessons, Rio goes to her after class, but she seems to have forgotten. When he enters her room, it's a total mess. Turns out, even though she's a genius who skipped grades to become a teacher at just 12 years old, she's not so good at daily life. It was a situation that really made people sweat, but Rio had no choice except to help clean up the messy room. Since Rio was originally a university university student, answering elementary school questions was no problem at all. The white-haired girl felt both a little sorry for Rio and also admired him, so she asked if there was anything she could help with. Because Rio didn't know any of the writing in this world, he asked her to please teach him how to read and study the language. The swordsmanship teacher saw that Rio's moves were unusual, so he suggested they have a friendly sparring match. Using building experience from his past life, Rio went straight for the attack and struck directly at the weak point, and the teacher realized Rio had real talent to become a knight. But Rio said he wasn't interested in being a knight. Have you ever seen such a cute little lowly teacher? She graduated at just 12 years old and already acts like an adult in front of students, really hating being treated like a kid. If anyone says she's short, she gets mad, but after 5 years, she still hasn't grown taller. Soon, it was almost time for final exams, and Rio spent all his days in the library catching up, determined not to embarrass his top student reputation, even in another world. This scene made him remember his past life, how he and his childhood friend attended the same high school, but one day he suddenly disappeared. Could it be that she was isekai'd too? Soon, final exam results were posted, and Rio tied with the eldest princess for first place. Seeing this, the little blonde guy immediately jumped out to protest, insisting he was just taking the test normally and still accusing Rio of cheating. At this, the eldest princess stepped forward to defend Rio, and the white-haired girl guaranteed that Rio's grades were real, leaving the little blonde no choice but to walk away, frustrated. Back in the lab, the white-haired girl admitted she was worried because the villain is pretty crafty when it comes to bullying, but Rio confidently said he'd be fine and asked if she didn't want to be his friend. The white-haired girl blushed and said she did and joked that if he ever got bullied so badly he cried, she'd let him come find her for comfort. Mr. Celia is still such a little kid, really easy to hug, she teased. Stop it, I haven't grown up yet, she protested. Just like that, 5 years quickly passed. Rio gained his teacher's trust and was chosen as the Academy's representative to compete with the kingdom's knights in an exchange event. He excitedly told the white-haired girl the good news, and she said if he performed well, he could even join the knights after graduation. But Rio told her he didn't plan to become a knight, and only then did she notice that Rio was now taller than her. You're still so small, he teased, and she replied, stop saying that. I haven't grown at all, but I said the same thing 4 years ago. No one expected it, but Rio's opponent in the exchange would be the blonde guy, the very one who used to bully him. People say revenge is a dish best served cold, but Rio only took 5 years to transform. The guy who once tortured him is now just a loser. If you don't want to be a knight, what do you plan to do after graduation? He was asked, and Rio replied that he wanted to travel outside the country. The white-haired girl hearing this was unhappy and hinted that he could stay as her assistant since she'd always thought of him as her future husband. But now, hearing he wanted to leave, she was at a loss. Actually, Rio just wanted to visit where his parents used to live. He told the white-haired girl it was just something he was thinking about. Soon, it was the day of the knight exchange event. The judge announced that Rio would be the first to compete, and even before going out, the blonde guy mocked him. In the stands, only the white-haired girl cheered for him, but to everyone's surprise, Rio's opponent was the very same blonde guy, now the vice captain who had once tried to torture him for a confession. They say old enemies are the most bitter, but after 5 years, Rio had become completely different, and facing the blonde, he didn't even bother picking up his shield. Even when the blonde used all his strength, Rio could handle it easily. After losing, the blonde guy was very upset, but as a knight, a loss is a loss, and he left the field in disgrace while Rio became an instant star, cheered by the crowd as the defeated blonde grew even more bitter inside. That night, the blonde guy went drinking and complained about what had happened, not knowing that the person in front of him was actually the mastermind behind the kidnapping of the second princess 5 years ago. He also learned it was Rio who had ruined that plan. The next day, the white-haired girl planned a celebration for Rio, but saw him heading in another direction, so she decided to follow him. She witnessed a girl confessing her love to Rio. Even though Rio couldn't form a magic contract, he could still copy how magic flows and reproduce the skills. Even the white-haired girl had to chant to cast spells, since magic in this world required formulas, so the white-haired girl taught him a glowing magic to help him control his mana. The blonde guy claimed this was just a basic spell everyone knew and said it wasn't right to give Rio special lessons. Then, to prove a point, he performed a glowing spell in front of the others, but the white-haired girl showed them both up by casting 10 glowing spells at once. Rio understood she was encouraging him, but even if he couldn't form a magic contract, he could still imitate mana flow and recreate magic, though he kept this to himself because he knew that living as an outsider meant he had to be careful. So, facing the mockery from the nobles, Rio just chose to quietly bear it. The second princess wanted to help, but the eldest princess stopped her. The school decided to test the students' military training by organizing a field exercise. The route was already planned, but the blonde guy wanted to take a shortcut to get better results. The gray-haired student's family knew the area well and provided a path that greatly shortened the journey. The blonde guy only pretended to ask the two princesses for their opinions, but since one was proud and the other indecisive, he made all the decisions. As a commoner, Rio was in charge of carrying everyone's luggage. Just how strong was this blue glowing Rio? When the second princess fell off a cliff and was in danger, Rio jumped down and with one hand pushed her back up to safety. So impressive, even Newton's grave would shake. Suddenly, goblins appeared and scared the blonde guy, but as students of the Royal Academy, they had skills and quickly used magic tools to boost their strength and defeated the goblins. While they celebrated victory, Rio noticed something strange in the forest. The man in black, who'd found out Rio had ruined his plan, decided to finally test Rio's strength as they got closer to the next checkpoint. Right in front of them was a bottomless cliff, and everyone started discussing whether they should turn back, but suddenly a long spear was thrown down at their feet, and a whole group of beastmen appeared. Gray Hair was caught off guard and got slashed on the right foot by the spear, crying out and looking for someone to comfort him, but instead, he was heartlessly pushed aside. In the chaos, he accidentally knocked the second princess off the cliff. Realizing what happened, Rio didn't hesitate and jumped straight down after her, catching the second princess in his arms. Even Newton would have been shocked by this crazy move. After the second princess climbed back up, she was worried about Rio, but the situation was too urgent for her to show concern, so she joined the group to fight off the beastmen. The girls really were much stronger than the boys, and soon the beastmen were wiped out with magic. When the crisis was over, Gray Hair started making trouble again, saying it wasn't him who knocked the second princess off the cliff, but that Rio pushed him, and he was just a victim who had to rescue her to avoid getting in trouble. Luckily, Rio used wind magic to land safely and wasn't hurt, but he knew he couldn't explain himself, so he decided to take the blame for pushing the second princess. It looked like his dream of graduating peacefully was over. Just as Rio was about to leave, something unexpected happened. A giant minotaur appeared, scaring all the nobles. The eldest princess quickly cast a huge lightning spell, but the minotaur easily swept it away. Then 3 magicians tried to use ice spells, but their aim was off, and the minotaur just dodged them. Even a single attack couldn't touch it. Seeing they couldn't win, the blonde guy quickly led his men to run away. The second princess hid and healed the wounded, but before she realized, the minotaur almost got her. Just as it was about to grab the second princess, Rio dashed in and chopped off the minotaur's arm, then distracted it to let the princess escape. With his strengthened body, Rio fought the minotaur head to head, knowing if he didn't fight, the second princess would die. They fought fiercely, back and forth, until Rio saw an opening and finished the minotaur with a deadly strike. Right after, the eldest princess arrived, and Rio quickly turned away and left. He didn't know that all of this was being watched by the man in black, who instantly figured out Rio was from the Bayun region, and that he used elf techniques even stronger than magic. With that, the graduation field exercise officially ended. Meanwhile, the white-haired girl passed by the dean's office and overheard a conversation she shouldn't have heard. It turned out that Gray Hair's father, not wanting to lose his position, had teamed up with the dean to blame the accident of pushing the second princess off the cliff on Rio, who had already gone missing. The white-haired girl, feeling helpless, went back to her lab, and right then, Rio, wearing a cloak, suddenly arrived. She rushed to hug him, and Rio explained everything that happened, knowing that even if he told the truth, nobody would believe him. This time, he came just to say goodbye. He would use a fake name from now on and write letters to her regularly, using his old name, Haruto. Watching Rio leave, the white-haired girl couldn't help but cry. After that, Rio actually managed to eat a big bowl of noodles at a night market, a dish invented by a local lord who made noodles from wheat and even had buns with meat and cheese. He was definitely an isekai traveler too. Falsely accused, Rio fled the kingdom and in just 3 days arrived in the neighboring city of Amando. Luckily, his name wasn't on the wanted list there, so he could buy supplies freely before heading to the remote Bayun region. As he was walking, Rio saw a familiar stall selling farm pasta from Earth. He asked the owner for a bowl and was amazed that it tasted exactly like the noodles he remembered, figuring the creator was another isekai traveler. The owner told him about a local market, so Rio went there to buy flour for the journey. Inside, a man named Rem noticed Rio's black hair and treated him kindly, thinking he must be a good person because he chose such quality goods. Rem even told Rio about their delivery service, so Rio wrote a letter to the white-haired girl before leaving. What he didn't know was that Rem himself was also an isekai traveler. While Rio was hurrying through the forest, he suddenly found a child lying on the road. He rushed over to check, but the child suddenly spat out a poison needle at Rio. He dodged the attack and kicked the kid away, but the poison on the needle had already blurred his vision. This child was once just an ordinary girl from Earth, but had become a slave beastkin, kept in a dark dungeon and abused by her master, then forced to assassinate Rio. She followed him, looking for a chance, but before she could attack again, Rio quickly cured himself and then discovered the poison wasn't working anymore. The girl instantly forgot about the plan and picked up a weapon to attack Rio fiercely, but Rio dodged, used elf techniques to transform his body, and the lolly swordswoman also activated her skill-enhancing magic, making her even more dangerous. She was surprised at how fast Rio was for a human, but after a fierce fight, Rio figured out her attacks looked fierce, but her stance was weak, so he caught an opening and slammed her down. Just like that, Rio easily subdued the loli. With no other choice, he used magic to knock her out, and after undressing her to check for injuries, found a collar on her neck. Luckily, Rio had seen the right spell for lifting curses on the road, so he copied the magic and removed the collar. The loli, still in a daze, revealed her sad story. She was the little girl from the bus on Earth, but after arriving in this world, she was turned into a beastkin and abused by Gray Hair. Haunted by fear, she would wake from nightmares, and when she saw Rio, Rio? She thought he was a bad guy too and was terrified of being tricked. Only when Rio showed her the broken collar and told her she was safe did she finally stop worrying. Overcome with relief, the loli started crying on the spot. When Rio heard the name of the loli's master, he instantly realized that poison hair was actually gray hair from before. They were afraid the truth would come out, so they sent someone to assassinate her. Once Rio was sure the loli wouldn't try to kill him anymore, he untied her ropes and told her she was free now, her collar was gone, and she didn't need to go back to her master. He even told her that there were other demi-humans like her living in the east, but even after gaining freedom, the loli kept following behind him, because in this world demi-humans were always treated as slaves. There was no place for her in the human kingdoms, and after being enslaved for so long, she had no idea what to do next. The only one she trusted now was Rio, who never treated her badly. Still, because she once tried to kill him, Rio wasn't sure if he could trust her yet. The little loli even said she'd be willing to wear the collar again if it would make him trust her. Rio asked, "Didn't you say you hated that collar?" But she answered, "Compared to that, I'm more afraid of being alone." Soft-hearted, Rio agreed to let her travel with him. After throwing away the collar, the loli told Rio her name was Latifah. On their journey, Rio always looked after Latifah, sharing the same food with her and treating her with real care, something Latifah had never experienced as a slave. He never saw her as a servant. Whenever she got tired, Rio would stop and set up camp so she could rest, and at night, he even cooked pasta for her. Latifah immediately recognized the dish by name, saying she'd eaten it a long time ago, but in this world, nobody called it pasta. That night, Latifah had nightmares, mumbling in her sleep that she wanted to go back to Tokyo, and Rio realized he was right. Latifah also wished to return to Tokyo. The next morning, Latifah woke up to see Rio sleeping beside her, her face turning bright red, and she realized Rio reminded her of her older brother at work. Latifah asked if she could call him Big Brother. Thinking how this little girl had been reborn as a slave and lived such a lonely life, Rio decided to take care of her and comfort her. This overpowered main character really went all out. Not only did he win the heart of Latifah, but a bunch of elf girls basically kidnapped him and brought him home to keep him warm. Even the most experienced player would be impressed. That night, after taking care of Latifah, Rio discovered that the fire outside their tent had gone out, and when he went out, he saw a wolf standing right there. Suddenly, the wolf shone with a dazzling light, almost blinding Rio. Then, the wolf transformed into a demi-human, and more demi-humans surrounded him. Because the flash of light had blinded Rio, he was knocked down by a sudden attack but quickly used spirit arts to sense the number and position of his enemies. Rio tried to explain he was a good person, but the demi-humans didn't believe him. They thought all humans were bad. When they checked the tent, they saw Latifah unconscious from a sleeping spell, which made them even more suspicious, so the fierce black-haired girl immediately attacked and injured Rio. He hurriedly used spirit arts to heal himself while dodging attacks and kept trying to explain. The white-haired demi-human told Rio to obediently go back with them and promised to let him go after checking the truth. "It's a misunderstanding. I didn't kidnap her. I just wanted you to protect this child." But no one believed him. When Rio fainted, he met the pink-haired lady again in a deep dream. They had another heart-to-heart, and after a final hug, she disappeared. Then Rio heard his childhood friend calling him, and when he opened his eyes, he found himself tied up. Latifah burst in and hugged him tightly. She'd woken up to find Rio missing and thought he'd abandoned her. Seeing Rio hurt, she angrily asked who did it, and the four demi-human girls, realizing they were wrong, all stayed quiet. At that moment, an old lady entered and sincerely apologized to Rio. The black-haired girl was the first to kneel and ask for forgiveness, and the other three followed. Seeing their sincerity, Rio couldn't hold a grudge. The old lady ordered the elves to unlock his shackles, saying, "Tomorrow I'll gather the elders and give you a proper apology. Tonight, please just rest. Don't do anything reckless." Since she was so earnest, Rio agreed. At the center of the elves' village stood a giant world tree, surrounded by a high-level illusion barrier that only people with strong spirit talent could see through. The old lady was amazed that Rio's spirit tree was self-aware, praising its rare potential. She took Rio to the meeting room where the three elders apologized for their mistake and thanked him for saving Latifah. Both sides worked things out, reaching an understanding. To thank Rio, they asked what he wanted most, and Rio said he hoped they would accept Latifah. The elders saw how much Latifah relied on Rio and thought she'd be heartbroken if he just left, so they hoped Rio could stay longer, promising to make his time in the village as comfortable as possible, even offering to let him marry one of the girls if he wanted. "Really? Then I'll stay for a while, and I hope you can teach me some spirit arts." Just then, Rio heard another girl's voice. Behind him stood a beautiful green-haired elf named Aiko, the great spirit of the world tree. She sensed the spirit energy inside Rio and asked if he'd ever made a contract with a spirit. Once someone contracts a spirit, they can't use magic anymore, which is a big deal for humans. She offered to check Rio's body, and sure enough, there was a humanoid spirit sleeping inside him. Do you know how rare humanoid spirits are? Only advanced spirits can take human form. Long ago, there were 6 great spirits, but they disappeared in a huge war 1,000 years ago. You might have one of them inside you. Rio asked if this was a problem, but she reassured him, "No, you'll just be treated like a saint. After all, even my high-level spirit is worshipped as a god." Thanks to this, Rio got to live in the village's most luxurious luxurious villa, where he found Latifah and 3 elves waiting for him. Latifah, now in new clothes, happily gave Rio a tour of the house. The 5 of them shared a warm meal together, surprised to find real rice. It turned out the ingredients came from the Bayun region. Then one of the girls asked Rio which room he'd like, since the elders had arranged for the girls to look after him. At first, Rio wasn't very comfortable with the idea of the girls living together with him as his wives, but the old lady came to him and sincerely asked him to accept it, explaining that it was all for Latifah's sake. She needed others to help take care of her, not just him. Seeing their concern, Rio agreed, and from then on, he started to get used to the beautiful company, slowly forgetting the troubles that brought him here, and began to enjoy a peaceful and happy life with his new family. But on the day of the village's Great Spirit Festival, the man in black who had once kidnapped the second princess returned, riding a golem and stealing an egg from a cave near the village. As he left, he smiled with satisfaction, proud of his scheme. Life in another world with girls on every side might sound dreamy, and Rio really did seem to be living it up. After a year in the village, Rio and Latifah were honored at the festival for their contributions. During the ceremony, Latifah was accepted as an official villager with the sacred kiss of Lady Ice, and after the ritual, everyone celebrated with a big feast. But as night fell, things got a little wild. 3 elf girls felt Rio was too formal and decided to get closer, hugging him so tightly he didn't know what to do, until the red-haired girl showed up and rescued him. She explained that they just wanted to be friends and felt like there was still a distance between them, even though they all live together now. Rio admitted he wasn't great at socializing, but hoped their friendship would grow. The red-haired girl promised to help and took the others to get drinks. Seeing how well Latifah had settled in, Rio thought maybe it was time to leave her in the village and move on, so he called Latifah aside and asked if she was happy there. Latifah said she was, but when Rio told her he planned to leave soon to visit the Bayun region, his parents' homeland, she cried and ran away, not wanting to hear any explanation. While Rio was at a loss, the man in black gave a young man in the area a red pill, telling him to run toward the spirit village if there was trouble, but really used him to attract a group of black dragons to the village. Sensing the danger, the spirit warriors went out to fight, and Rio found himself in a hand-to-hand battle with a giant black dragon. Relying only on physical strength, he beat the dragon to the ground and even finished it off with a spiraling attack, shocking all the girls who watched. Meanwhile, the man in black used the chaos to steal more dragon eggs, and the elves noticed a suspicious magic presence below. When the young man tried to flee, the black-haired elf stopped him with a lightning sword just as a dragon swooped down, forcing the group to run. To save the village, Sarah led the others to fight off the flying dragons, while the man in black decided the young man was no longer useful and left him to die mid-air. By chance, the dragon egg landed near Latifah. As she checked the broken egg, a black dragon landed beside her, wailing in grief. Hearing the roar, Rio rushed to the forest, but Latifah was quickly beaten down by the dragon. Just as it was about to finish her, the red-haired girl appeared, blocking the attack and calling forth a blood beast to strike back, but the dragon was too strong and knocked her aside. Fearing the dragon would reach the village, Latifah lured it away while the red-haired girl prepared her strongest attack, but even she was nearly crushed. At the last second, a huge magic blast hit the dragon, binding it, and Rio grabbed Latifah to safety. Then he charged forward and struck the dragon so hard it doubted its own strength, finishing it with a spiraling attack that stunned everyone. The defeated dragons retreated, and Rio was hailed as the hero who saved the village. Latifah, feeling guilty for her behavior, apologized to Rio, fearing he wanted to leave because she was a burden, but Rio reassured her, calling her his little sister and saying he would never find her troublesome. He explained his wish to visit his parents' homeland, and Latifah, moved by his words, shared her own secret. She was a traveler from another world too. Rio admitted the same, saying he should have told her earlier but hadn't because of his own feelings. He promised to live strongly in this world, and Latifah vowed to do the same, promising to wait for Rio's return. Soon after, Rio said goodbye to everyone. The dwarf elder gave him a magic sword and a set of armor made from black dragon hide, plus a pile of supplies, while the elf elder gave him a storage bracelet to help with his journey. The girls promised to take good care of Latifah, and after a heartfelt farewell hug, Rio quietly set off on his new adventure. So if you liked this anime and want a part 2, let me know in the comments. I'll upload part 2 right away.